I had just come home for a little while from my government job when a strange invitation showed up. It wasn't a mistake. My husband's secretary had sent it. I was curious, so I opened the envelope. When I saw what was inside, I felt like I couldn't move. Chloe was getting married, and the man she was marrying was my husband. I picked up my phone right away and called Mark Peterson to ask him what was going on. But before I could get much out, he started yelling at me. "Anna," he said in a cold voice, "you're just like a maid our family helped out. Who do you think you are to question what I do?" I took a slow, deep breath and answered him in a calm, steady voice. "Are you really sure your family doesn't need my help anymore?" He just laughed. "Are you trying to threaten me now? You're just a pretty face." Then he told me the truth, and it felt like being hit. "Let's be clear, Chloe and I already have a child. I'm going to marry her, and I don't care if you like it or not." He kept on yelling, full of anger. I turned the volume down on my phone and just waited for him to finish. When he finally stopped and the line was quiet, I spoke softly. "If you've really made your decision, then you should go ahead. I won't try to stop you." I paused for a moment, then my voice changed. "But you should remember that you and I are still legally married. What you're doing is adultery, and if something bad happens because of it, that's on you." My words just seemed to make him angrier. "Anna," he sneered, "you think you can lecture me about how to act? We've been married for years and we've barely seen each other. How do I know you don't have some other guy you're seeing?" I held the phone tighter, trying to control my anger. "If you think that, I can explain everything. But Mark, planning a wedding without even telling your wife is more than just thoughtless. It's incredibly disrespectful." He started yelling again. "Respect? Why should you get any respect? You've lived in our house for 3 years, eating our food and sleeping under our roof. Why would I respect you? If my father hadn't made me marry you, I would have had a real family by now." He then screamed into the phone, "Enough!" I finally lost my temper and yelled back, "Let's just forget about everything else right now. I just want one thing, an explanation for why you cheated on me." Mark laughed a mocking laugh. "An explanation from me? I'm the CEO of the Peterson Group, the biggest company in Eastport. I don't have to explain myself to anyone, especially not to you." And with that, he hung up the phone. I just sat on the couch, frozen, with the phone still in my hand. My anger was slowly building up inside me. I couldn't just let this happen. I was about to get up and go to his office to talk to him face to face, but just then, the front door flew open. A woman who looked like she came straight from a fashion show walked in as if she owned the place, jingling a key in her hand. A few employees from the Peterson Group followed behind her. "Hurry up," she told them. "This room needs to be ready for the wedding tomorrow." I looked up at her slowly, and my voice was like ice. "Chloe, what are you doing? This is my house. Who said you could touch anything in here?" Chloe just raised an eyebrow, looking amused. Her lips curled into a smug smile. "Oh, Anna, I guess nobody told you. This house isn't yours anymore." She pulled a green document out of her purse with a dramatic flair. "See this? Mark officially transferred the deed to me. This house is mine now. This is my home, and I'll move in whenever I want. What are you going to do about it?" I looked at her closely. "Chloe, Mark and I are still legally married, and you can't even wait one day to move in." Chloe's face lit up with happiness, and her eyes sparkled with a strange kind of pride. "Of course I can't wait. I picked out this house years ago. You were only living here because I allowed it. Think of it as a favor that has just ended." I let out a soft breath and gave her a small, hard-to-read smile. "You've been interested in my husband for a while, haven't you?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. Chloe didn't show any shame at all. In fact, she looked even happier. With a smirk, she said, "Does it really matter if I have or not, Anna? What difference does it make to you now?" She leaned in closer, her voice sharp and mean. "Come on. Do you really think someone like you should be with a man like President Mark Peterson?" I waved my hand casually and met her gaze. "You're right, I don't. The Peterson Corporation is doing better than ever, with business all over the country. I'm just a nobody. How could someone like me be good enough for their heir?" Before I could even finish, Chloe came storming over to me, her face twisted with anger. Then why are you still here? Get out! I was kicked out of the house with only a few of my clothes. Standing outside the home where I had lived for 3 years, I felt a strange sense of bitterness. I remembered my coworkers complaining about their own relationship problems, like cheating boyfriends and sudden betrayals. I used to listen to them quietly, feeling sure that something like that would never happen to me. Now I realized I had been fooled more than anyone else. To be fair, it was never my idea to marry Mark in the first place. 3 years ago, the Peterson Corporation was about to go bankrupt. The founder of the company came to our house and reminded my father about an old engagement agreement between our families. I felt a sense of duty, so I agreed to marry Mark. But on the day we were supposed to have our wedding, Mark refused to have a ceremony. He said we could register the marriage, but that was it. I thought about it and accepted. After all, love takes time. But 3 years went by, and love never came. Instead, my husband left me for another woman. The more I thought about it, the more humiliated I felt. I got in a taxi and went straight to the Peterson Corporation headquarters. From the moment I walked into the lobby, people started staring at me. I could hear them whispering. Some were trying to be quiet about it, but others didn't bother. Isn't that the Peterson daughter-in-law? What's she doing here? You didn't hear? Mark is marrying Chloe, his secretary, tomorrow. She must be here to sort out the breakup. Poor woman. She goes on vacation and comes back to find out her husband is with someone else. What a mess. I understood then that to them, I was just a sad joke. When I got to Mark's office and tried to open the door, a staff member stood in my way. "Mrs. Peterson, I'm sorry, but you can't go in right now." I looked him right in the eye. "I am still legally married to your president. Are you sure you want to stop me?" He looked down, clearly nervous. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but President Peterson gave specific orders. He doesn't want to see you." I glared at him and then pushed the door open anyway. What I saw inside explained everything. The weird looks, the quiet gossip. "Well, it's the middle of the day, and you two seem to have a lot of energy," I said dryly, closing the door behind me and sitting down across from Mark as if nothing was wrong. Mark slowly got up from on top of Chloe, casually brushing off his clothes. He gave me a dismissive look. "Anna," he said with a sigh, "we already talked about this on the phone. What else do you want?" Before I could answer, Chloe got up from his chair with a nasty grin on her face. "Why else would she be here? She obviously wants money." "Money?" I almost laughed. If I really wanted money, I could make one phone call and have more offers than I could count. But I wasn't surprised. Chloe had always been ambitious. It was obvious she wanted the Peterson empire for herself. I looked at both of them with a cold, sharp gaze. "I was actually thinking about giving the Peterson family one last chance," I said calmly. "But now, I see that's not necessary at all." The moment I said that, Mark's expression changed. His face got dark with anger. "You arrogant little thing," Mark snapped. "Do you think you're someone important? We're still the richest family in Harbor City, and you're just a project manager. What makes you think you can stand up to the Petersons? If it weren't for my father, I would have divorced you a long time ago." I slowly lifted my head and met his eyes without flinching. "So this is what your family has become? You really think you're above everyone else, don't you?" His face turned red with anger. "Shut your mouth. You have no right to talk about the Petersons in the Capitol." He suddenly turned and yelled at the door. "Security! Get this woman out of here right now. From now on, no one lets her in without my permission." At his command, a group of professionally trained security guards rushed into the room, but I stayed calm, looking around the room with a cool expression before letting out a soft, mocking laugh. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Peterson," I said. "I can see myself out." I stood up slowly and added, "Mark, the only reason I came here today was to tell you one thing." I paused and the corners of my mouth curled into a smile. "You told me to leave, so remember this moment. Because one day, you might be the one begging me to come back." I turned to leave. "Stop right there," Mark yelled from behind me. I looked back, still smiling, not bothered at all. "What is it, Mr. Peterson? Having second thoughts already?" Mark's glare turned icy as he reached into a drawer and slammed a thick file on the table. The divorce papers. I already had my lawyer prepare them. Sign them now. As I looked down at the documents, everything I had suspected was confirmed. We had been married for 3 years, and he had been cheating the whole time. First, he refused to have a wedding, only agreeing to register our marriage. Then, he started seeing someone else behind my back. Now, he was forcing me to leave. It had all been his plan. "I'll sign them," I said, "but not before I call your father." Mark clearly thought I was trying to get his sympathy. His tone became even more dismissive. "Call whoever you want. It won't change anything." Watching him sit there with that smug, triumphant look on his face, whatever little respect I had left for the Petersons disappeared completely. "You really misunderstood me, Mark. I was never trying to get you to come back," I said flatly. "I just thought your father should know that because of you, this family is going to fall apart." I had once thought about sparing the Petersons out of respect for the older generation, but people like Mark didn't deserve it. Spitting the words out like venom, he shouted, "Anna, let me be very clear. Even if my father were standing right here, I would still divorce you." I raised my hand to cut him off. "That's enough. You've said what I needed to hear." Then, in front of everyone, I pulled out my phone and dialed David Peterson's number. "Hello, Uncle David. This is Anna." He answered cheerfully. "Anna, why didn't you let us know you were back in town? I would have sent Mark to pick you up." I glanced at Mark, then spoke slowly and clearly. "There's no need. From today on, your family has nothing to do with me." There was a short silence on the other end of the line before David asked carefully, "Anna, what do you mean? Did Mark say something to upset you? Let me apologize for him. Please, can we just—" Before he could finish, Mark snatched the phone from my hand. "Dad, stop trying to talk me out of this. I've had enough for years. We don't need her in this family." And with that, he hung up on his own father. After that, there was no reason for me to be polite anymore. I took the divorce papers from the table and signed my name without any hesitation. Then I passed them back without even looking at them again. Mark's face twitched slightly as he watched how quickly I acted. There was a hint of dissatisfaction in his eyes. In a voice that tried to hide his irritation, he asked, "Anna, what are you smiling at?" I looked up at him, my expression calm, my voice without any warmth. "Why can't I be happy, Mr. Peterson? You're not seriously thinking I'm heartbroken over this, are you?" I let out a faint laugh. The Peterson family, to me, that's nothing more than a name. Just one sentence, and it's all in the past. His face flushed red with anger, and he glared at me with a clenched jaw. Then, with a stiff movement, he scribbled his own signature at the bottom of the divorce papers. Just like that, our 3-year marriage was over. Strangely, as I watched him sign his name, I didn't feel any sadness or regret. If anything, a wave of relief washed over me. I felt like I had been carrying a heavy weight for years, and now it was finally gone. The papers are signed. I've said what I needed to say. Can I go now? Wait. Just as I turned to leave, Chloe walked up to me, her heels clicking on the floor. "Anna," she said with a smirk, "tomorrow is Mark's and my big day. I'm sure you'll stop by, won't you?" As she spoke, she reached up and slightly adjusted her collar, revealing the faint marks on her neck with a calculated sense of pride. I looked at her, my eyes cool but my smile pleasant. Of course! Since Miss Chloe herself gave me such a sincere invitation, how could I possibly say no? Then I tilted my head and added smoothly, "Not only will I be there, but I'll also bring a very special gift for both of you." The next morning, I ordered a funeral wreath online, picked it up, and walked straight to the wedding venue. The Peterson Group was a major company in the capital, and everyone invited to the wedding was a well-known figure: business leaders, socialites, people you see on the front pages of magazines. And then there was me, the supposedly disgraced ex-wife. I had barely walked through the gates when a few people recognized me. "Wait, isn't that Mark Peterson's ex-wife? What is she doing here?" "You haven't heard? The bride, Chloe, personally invited her." "My goodness, she's bold. Bringing a funeral wreath to the wedding of the Peterson family's heir? That's insane." I ignored them and walked in confidently, holding the wreath up high as if it belonged there. The moment I entered the venue, the crowd went silent. Every guest turned to look at me in shock, their mouths hanging open. Mark was still backstage getting ready. Chloe was at the front greeting guests. When her eyes saw the wreath in my hands, her smile instantly vanished. Her voice was sharp as she snapped, "Anna, are you here to cause trouble? Take that thing away right now." I looked at her, pretending to be innocent. "Miss Chloe, what are you talking about? You invited me, remember? I brought flowers. What kind of guest shows up with nothing? This wreath cost me several $100s. You want me to just throw it away?" Chloe's teeth clenched and she stepped closer, her eyes blazing with fury. "You horrible woman. You must have a death wish." As soon as she said that, the security guards around us started to move, circling in on me. Chloe, full of anger, walked right up to me, raised her hand, and patted my cheek a few times condescendingly. "You have two choices," she spat. "You crawl out of here or I'll have them carry you out." I met her eyes and smiled slowly. My legs work just fine. I go where I want. No one tells me what to do. And with that, I lifted the wreath in my hands and threw it at her. I've spent enough of my life being quiet. Today, I feel like being loud. Chloe clearly didn't expect me to throw the wreath at her in front of so many people. Her face turned a sickly shade of green. She raised her hand and shouted, "Get her!" But I stood my ground, my arms folded, a smirk on my lips. "Chloe, have you ever heard the saying, 'Don't challenge fate for your own gain'?" Just as the last word left my mouth, someone in the crowd gasped, "Look outside, quick!" Across the street, more than a dozen sleek black government cars were approaching the wedding venue in a long, imposing line. Chloe quickly fixed her outfit, forced a polite smile on her face, and hurried over to greet them. She said sweetly, "What a surprise to have all of you visit. Why didn't anyone call ahead to let us know?" A middle-aged man in a traditional suit gave her a sharp look but didn't say anything. Instead, he turned and jogged straight toward me. Everyone in the room stood up immediately, without exception. The man in the suit stopped just a few feet from me, his expression full of worry as he looked me over from head to toe. "Anna, are you all right? You weren't hurt, were you?" he asked, his voice urgent and sincere. The people around us could barely believe what they were seeing. Gasps went through the crowd. "Did you hear what he just called her?" "I think he said Anna. Oh my goodness, she doesn't even look 30. And even Commander Evans treats her with such respect. Could she be—" As the whispers grew louder, Chloe's face drained of color. I raised my hand gently. "Commander Evans," I said calmly, "you really didn't have to come in person. I'm sorry to trouble you." Commander Evans paused, surprised by my words, then quickly bowed his head. "Not at all. Protecting your safety is our responsibility, Anna." After a brief exchange, I turned slightly and pointed to Chloe, who was still frozen in disbelief. "It was her. She tried to hit me just now. I'll leave it to you to handle." Commander Evans' expression changed instantly. His face darkened and his gaze grew cold as steel. He snapped, "Take her in. Deliver her to Section 76. He paused, then added sharply, "I now have reason to believe she is a foreign infiltrator. No one is allowed to speak with her unless I give permission." The moment he gave the order, a dozen armed officers swarmed in from the sides, each carrying a standard-issue rifle. Their disciplined, intimidating presence made the earlier security guards look like toy soldiers. It wasn't until the cold metal handcuffs clicked around her wrists that Chloe finally understood what was happening. She began pleading loudly, "Commander Evans, what is the meaning of this? I'm going to marry into the Peterson family. You can't do this to me." Hearing that last line made me laugh out loud despite all my years of training to stay composed. "Miss Chloe, you really are something else," I said, my tone light. "I thought I already told you the Petersons, that family you keep bragging about, means very little to me." I let that sink in, then changed my tone slightly. "But don't worry, your husband will be joining you shortly." Just moments ago, Chloe had been bragging about her future status. Now she was pinned to the ground in handcuffs, her mind probably spinning, wondering how a wedding had turned into such a disaster. With a small nod from me, the officers pressed her to the ground as she struggled and cried out toward the back of the venue. "Mark, help me, please, hurry!" Perhaps sensing something was wrong, Mark appeared not long after, dressed in his custom-tailored suit, looking every bit the groom. He stepped into view and froze, clearly shaken by the scene. His eyes darted from Chloe to me. Anna, what did you do? Let Chloe go right now. I looked at him, almost feeling sorry for him. The two of them really were a perfect match, foolish and blind. Let her go? I said slowly, smiling. That's not going to happen. And since you're here, why not take you two? Before he could react, another pair of handcuffs snapped around his wrists. Still unaware of how much trouble he was in, Mark glared at me and shouted, Anna, you dare touch me! I'm backed by the entire Peterson family. I stepped toward him slowly, my voice soft but clear. Mark, there's something I forgot to tell you. You were always wondering how the Petersons became one of the top 4 families in Jinghai overnight, weren't you? Well, let me end your curiosity. The person behind it all was me. As the minutes passed, the number of luxury cars gathering at the hotel entrance kept growing. People in the crowd began pulling out their phones, taking pictures of the scene. Even the hotel staff couldn't keep up. My goodness, one waiter whispered, his eyes wide. Who's getting married today? Look at all those cars. Forget the cars, another replied. Any one of those guests could cause a stir across the entire city just by showing up. This wedding must be huge. Look at the lineup. Every big name in the city is here. I ignored the murmurs around me. My eyes were fixed on Mark, who stood frozen in place, his face drained of color. He knew very well that the future of the Peterson family could fall apart with just one word from me. One after another, high-profile guests stepped out of their sleek black cars and made their way directly into the wedding hall. Leading the group was none other than David Peterson, founder of the Peterson Group and Mark's father. He barely waited for the driver to stop the car before hurrying toward me, out of breath. He still managed to speak first. Anna, I'm truly sorry for being late. He bent forward respectfully, his head lowered. His posture wasn't just polite, it was deferential. I spoke calmly. Mr. Peterson, there's no need to be so formal. I'm no longer part of the Peterson family. David's shoulders visibly tensed. He turned his head sharply to glare at his son. You fool, he barked. Look what you've done. You cried and begged me to hand over the company, and this is how you repay me? Anna has done so much for this family, and you, how dare you betray her like this? I, David Peterson, no longer recognize you as my son. His words were harsh, disowning his own child in public. But I had seen enough of the corporate world to know how these things worked. This was classic damage control, sacrifice the pawn to protect the king. I had seen the same tactic 3 years ago. There's really no need to be so dramatic, Mr. Peterson, I said with a light smile. It's only a divorce, after all. The color drained from David's face instantly. What? He shouted, his eyes bloodshot as he turned on Mark. Who gave you the authority to make such a decision behind my back? Mark, caught off guard by the outburst, began to cry, his face a picture of remorse. Dad, I was wrong. I didn't know Anna had such powerful connections. You could have told me sooner. David's tone turned colder. How much sooner did you want me to tell you? Did I not warn you? I told you Anna's background was not to be underestimated. I told you never to cross her. And what did you do? Not only did you divorce her, you tried to have someone lay hands on her. Do you have a death wish? Watching the two men argue back and forth, I felt a dull ache in my head. All right, enough. What's done is done, I said firmly. We are all adults. We must live with the consequences of our actions. Mark committed adultery. Chloe, a Peterson Group employee, attempted to harm me. Either one of those charges would be enough to destroy this entire family's reputation. Though I spoke clearly, I deliberately didn't give a final judgment. I wanted to see how this long-retired business titan would handle things when he was truly cornered. He didn't disappoint. David turned to me and said solemnly, Anna, from this moment on, the entire Peterson Group is at your disposal. As for my son, if you want to press charges or have him taken away, I will not object. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mark Peterson, the Peterson heir, the only successor of a corporate empire, and me, on paper, I was nothing more than a project manager. Most people assumed David had rushed to the scene to protect his son's interests, but now it was clear he had come to offer an apology. He came not as a father, but as a man trying to save what little honor his family had left. In this city, there were very few people who could command that kind of respect, only those at the very top. Those who didn't understand were left shocked, but Mark and Chloe, they understood all too well. Dad, this isn't as serious as you think, Mark pleaded. I can cancel the wedding, all right? But why should I go to jail? He looked at me, his eyes searching, almost playful. Right, Anna? You wouldn't really do that to me, would you? I slowly raised a single finger and wagged it gently in the air. No, I said, and I smiled. Mark clearly hadn't expected me to humiliate him so directly. His face darkened instantly, but before he could get a single word out, David Peterson stepped forward and delivered a loud slap across his son's face. A sharp crack echoed through the room. 5 bright red finger marks appeared on Mark's cheek. The entire room fell into a stunned silence. David Peterson turned to me solemnly and said, Anna, I sincerely apologize for what my son has done to you. Then, raising his right hand, he declared in front of everyone present, I, David Peterson, swear on everything I have, starting today, Mark is no longer my son. Whatever you decide to do with him, I will not interfere. He then cast a chilling glare at Chloe. As for this woman, he growled, Miss Anna, if you would allow me, I would like to handle her myself. I promise you, she will regret ever crossing you for the rest of her life. I understood exactly what he meant, and I nodded in quiet agreement. To be honest, dealing with Chloe myself would have been a hassle. Letting the Peterson family handle it was the best choice for both efficiency and satisfaction. Seeing my nod, David Peterson finally let out a long breath, as if a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. But Mark didn't share that sense of relief. Still burning from the slap, he exploded in anger. Dad, what is wrong with you today? I'm your son. Even if Anna has some power, we're still the wealthiest family in Capital City. Why should we be the ones bowing down to her? He wasn't the only one who was confused. Murmurs went through the crowd. The Petersons were an institution in the city. Some even said they were as wealthy as entire nations. Why would the founder of such a legacy be groveling to a woman who wasn't yet 30? Why would he go so far as to offer his own son to the authorities just to appease her? Only I knew the answer. Because aside from being Mark's wife, I held another, far more critical identity: lead project director of a top-secret national program. Anything or anyone that posed a threat to me had to be eliminated. That was also why Commander Evans, the most influential figure in Jinghai, had rushed to the wedding in such a panic. He wasn't here for gossip or drama. He was here to make sure I stayed safe. I looked over at Mark, still dazed, and allowed myself a faint smile. You want to know why your father apologized to me? I said. It's because my identity puts me far beyond the reach of people like you. Not a single tycoon in this city would dare cross me. I don't live in the same world as you or anyone else in this room. Understand? A gasp rippled through the crowd like a thunderclap. Who is this woman, really? How can she talk to the Petersons like that? I heard something about her being in charge of some classified project. A project? Could it be that one from 3 years ago, the one that made national headlines? The more they whispered, the more Mark's expression twisted with confusion and disbelief. He turned to his father, his face pale, his voice trembling. Dad, I'm still your only son. You can't just throw me away like this. Even if Anna has connections, we are the Petersons. We're the wealthiest in the region. Just give her money, whatever she wants. Why do I have to go to jail? Mark looked utterly defeated, whining as if he were the victim. But David Peterson no longer looked at him. His eyes were locked on me because he knew if this situation wasn't handled properly, it wouldn't just be his son who paid the price. The entire Peterson family could go down with him. Anna, he said carefully, my son was spoiled from an early age. His words don't represent the Peterson family. He spoke with a humility rarely seen in men of his stature. He was choosing every word with care, afraid that one misstep might bring consequences no amount of money could fix. I raised an eyebrow but kept my expression calm. Then hand your son over to the police. As soon as the words left my mouth, Mark panicked. Anna, don't think you're untouchable just because you know a few high-ranking officials. I'm the heir to the Peterson family. You can't do anything to me. But before he could finish his rant, his father's voice cut through the air, deep and final. No problem. We will do exactly as Anna says. Mark broke down right then and there, tears streaming down his face. Dad, are you out of your mind? I'm your son. In his heart, the Peterson family was untouchable, wealthy enough to make any problem disappear with money, no matter how serious. But unfortunately for him, he had crossed paths with me. David Peterson, who had been holding back for as long as he could, finally lost his temper. You shut your mouth. Haven't you done enough damage already? His voice boomed with fury. Do you even know why I would rather send you to prison than let you continue causing trouble outside? If this had been anyone else, I could have found a way to smooth it over, but you went and offended Anna. Do you have any idea that if it hadn't been for her, our entire family would have gone bankrupt years ago? His words struck like thunder. The room fell completely silent. It was no wonder the Petersons had managed to dominate the business scene across Harbor City. David Peterson's decisiveness and clarity had played no small part in that. He was willing to sacrifice his own son to protect the legacy of the family. He knew exactly what was at stake. Mark stood in stunned silence after hearing his father's words, while the rest of the guests were still reeling from the revelation about my identity. 2 guards had already stepped forward and held Mark firmly in place. At my signal, they would escort him out. One by one, the guests turned their gazes toward me, no longer dismissive or indifferent, but filled with unease and respect. I slowly walked up to Mark and sighed softly. You should be grateful your father stepped in. Otherwise, prison might have been the least of your worries. Tears of regret welled in Mark's eyes. Anna, he stammered, his voice trembling. I know I was wrong. I didn't see your worth before. Please, let's start over. I'll listen to everything you say from now on. I swear. By the time he finished, he was sobbing openly. I'm still young. I don't want to go to jail. I curved my lips into a cold smile and looked him straight in the eyes. Mark, I used to think you were just a little stubborn, but I never expected you to cheat on me. If I hadn't taken an early vacation this time, you would probably already have a child by now. If the Peterson family has any sense left, they had better learn to keep a low profile. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind seeing the wealthiest name in the capital replaced with a different one. That final sentence was not only meant for Mark. It was directed at David Peterson as well. Father and son exchanged glances, and without a word, both lowered their heads. After Mark was taken away, Chloe, the secretary who had delusions of climbing the social ladder, was handed over to David Peterson, just as we had previously agreed. As for what kind of punishment awaited her, I couldn't have cared less. After all, she and I were now worlds apart, at least 3 or 4 social classes, if not more. With David Peterson and his people gone, the incident finally came to a close. 5 years later, the project I had overseen was completed with great success, and I was awarded a national medal for outstanding achievement. When I returned to the capital, David Peterson had already absorbed the remaining 3 major families and stood as the undisputed richest man in the country. Coincidentally, I came back on the very day Mark was released from prison. David brought his son, fresh out of prison, to visit me in person. Unlike years ago, Mark's eyes held no arrogance now. Instead, there was fear, tension, and, above all, guilt. Standing behind him was a little girl who bore a striking resemblance to someone I once knew. So, you kept the child after all, I said softly, turning slightly to invite them in. But Mark remained standing at the doorway, unable to move. What's wrong? I asked lightly. Still afraid I might do something to you? My teasing helped ease the tension a little, and Mark managed a faint smile. Anna, he said, I asked my father to bring me here because there's something I've been meaning to tell you. I've held it in for 5 years. I never had the chance, but now that I finally see you, I need to say it. I was a bit surprised. I looked up and met his eyes. What is it you want to say? Mark took a deep breath, then looked at me with complete seriousness. At last, he softly spoke 3 words. I am sorry. I felt a small jolt inside, then gave him a gentle, forgiving smile. It's all in the past. I've already moved on. But Mark shook his head, his voice rising with emotion. No, wrong is wrong. Even if you have truly forgotten, I never can. Just as I was about to reply, the little girl suddenly ran out from behind him. Auntie, she said clearly, my daddy told me you are a great person who helped our family. When I grow up, I will repay your kindness. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then promise me something, all right? Promise you will grow up to be someone useful to this country. Can you do that? The little girl looked at me, then glanced at her father. She nodded with all the strength in her tiny body. You can count on me, Auntie. I will study hard and become someone just like you one day.